Let's get started. Number 8. People with high emotional intelligence are like editors of their own words. You're about to say something completely honest, but suddenly your brain flashes a red light. Wait a second, will this hurt them? Is it too harsh? Or worse, will they run for the hills after hearing this? So instead of dropping an emotional bomb, you switch to the gentler version. Add a smile, lower the volume to half, or sometimes just stay quiet, because silence feels safer. It's not that you're being fake, it's that you've learned raw truth, served straight, can be a little hard to swallow. You want to be honest, but you also want to be kind. That doesn't make you weak, it simply shows you care about how others feel. Sure, sometimes you sigh and think, if only someone could truly understand me 100%. But in return, you become the kind of person others feel comfortable around, the one they can open up to without fear of being hit with cold, blunt truths. Pausing before you speak, adjusting the dose of truth, and sprinkling in a touch of gentleness, that's emotional intelligence at its most refined. A way of life guided by empathy where words are both genuine and warm, and sometimes even charming enough to turn tension into a soft laugh.
Number 7. Feeling what others feel. You're watching a talent show, someone begins to sing with a beautiful voice, and suddenly your eyes well up. Or at the airport, you see a stranger embracing their child, and your chest tightens as if you yourself had just reunited with a loved one. The interesting part? You don't even know them. The context has nothing to do with you. And yet your heart vibrates as if you were living that moment yourself. That's emotional resonance, a clear sign of high emotional intelligence. People with strong EQ don't just observe emotions, they absorb them. Your body catches the feeling. Your breathing shifts, your eyes sting, sometimes tears flow, even though it's not your story. Others might call you too sensitive, but in truth, you're simply deeply attuned. Your mirror neurons are working overtime, sometimes a bit too enthusiastically. That's why a sad movie keeps you awake, a touching commercial feels like a trap, and heartfelt speeches leave you reaching for tissues again and again. But this is also a rare gift. You don't just empathize with others, you actually walk alongside them. That depth of presence makes people feel truly heard and understood. And whether it's on a screen or in real life, your heart shows up fully, overflowing with sincerity.
Number 6. Obsessing over what you said. The conversation ended hours ago, but in your mind, the tape is still playing. Every word, every glance, every pause, replaying over and over like a movie you just can't hit stop on. Did I go too far? Why did they go quiet after that? Should I have phrased it differently? You keep questioning yourself as if taking a final exam. The truth is, you're not overreacting. You just care deeply about how others feel, and you worry that you might have hurt someone without meaning to. For people with high emotional intelligence, this kind of post-event analysis is common. Your brain acts like a film editor in the cutting room, reviewing the scene not to punish you, but to understand what really happened. Of course, it can be exhausting. You wish you could just move on like everyone else, but your mind lingers, combing through every detail, looking for something to fix. And the ironic part, most of the time, nothing's wrong. No one's upset. No damage was done. But you still replay it because you're wired to care before you even realize it. That's conscience, compassion, and emotional awareness at work, all trying to protect the people around you, and sometimes to protect you too.
Number 5. Remembering feelings, not words. You might not recall the exact words someone said, but you remember the crack in their voice, the pause in mid-sentence, the way their eyes shifted, how the room suddenly grew heavy, even if no one else seemed to notice. For you, memories aren't just stored as events, they're wrapped in emotion. What stays with you isn't only what happened, but how it felt to be there. People with high emotional intelligence often carry this kind of memory. You catch the texture of interactions, the subtle changes in tone, the tension hiding underneath. Sometimes you even remember someone else's discomfort more vividly than your own. That's why certain moments linger. A casual remark that stung more than it should have. A fleeting glance that carried more weight than a full conversation. A silence so loud, it echoes years later. These things don't fade easily because your brain files them under important. And that filing system is what makes you different. You connect deeply. Others feel seen and understood in your presence. Because you don't just remember the story, you remember the emotional imprint it left behind. Something most people forget, but for you, it becomes the thread that binds. That's the difference.
Number 4. Always saying sorry. You block someone's path for half a second, and you apologize. You interrupt with a small question, and you apologize. Someone looks slightly uncomfortable, and suddenly you're wondering if you should apologize for existing, or maybe even for that one time you spoke way too confidently back in 2017. The truth is, you didn't actually do anything wrong. You simply sensed a shift in the air, and your reflex? To smooth it over. People with high emotional intelligence often carry this habit. You pick up on tension the way some people can smell rain before it falls. And when your inner barometer drops, your first instinct is to make things better even if you weren't the one who caused the storm. Sometimes you apologize not because you're guilty, but because you want others to feel safe. It's a kind of proactive repair, a quiet way of saying, I get it, before cracks even form. Of course, not everyone understands this. To them, it may look like insecurity or people-pleasing. But to you, it's simply empathy stepping forward. The hard part is, left unchecked, this habit can chip away at your confidence. You don't owe anyone an apology for just being here. But the fact that you care enough to ease the moment, that's emotional intelligence at work, even if it sometimes sounds like regret. Number 3, drained by social energy. You spend the whole day around people, at work, during a family gathering, or just running errands, and by the time you get home, your brain is waving a white flag. It needs a break. Nothing dramatic happened, no one yelled, yet your entire system feels overloaded, like your memory is maxed out. This is what happens when you absorb emotional noise. You pick up on the shift in someone's tone, the silent tension in their face, the unresolved friction between two people that no one else notices. High emotional intelligence isn't just about understanding others, it's about constantly feeling them. And when that radar runs nonstop all day, it drains you. That's why you may crave more alone time than others. Not because you're antisocial, but because your nervous system is busy processing emotional data most people don't even register. This sensitivity isn't weakness, it's high-resolution awareness. But like any high-resolution system, it burns through more energy. So, if you feel exhausted after a day that seemed uneventful, don't be surprised. You've been listening to a full surround soundtrack of emotions at maximum volume. Number 2. Shifting yourself depending on who you're with. Around one friend, you're loud, goofy, maybe even a little outrageous. With someone else, you soften, becoming calm and gentle. You can switch from silly to steady in an instant, just because a new person walks into the room. Some might call that fake, but to you, it's not pretending, it's adapting. People with high emotional intelligence don't just read the room, they blend with it. You pick up on tone, energy, body language, and then adjust your own vibe to meet people where they are. Not to manipulate, but to connect. That's why people feel comfortable around you. You raise or lower the tempo, shift your tone, fine-tune the volume of your emotions, and it all flows seamlessly, like a conversation with no awkward breaks. Sure, sometimes even you wonder, so which version is the real me? The truth is, all of them are. You're simply an emotional translator, someone who instinctively makes others feel understood without them having to spell it out. Of course, there's a cost. At times, you forget your own needs in the process. It's easy to default to what others want and skip asking yourself what you want.
But this quiet superpower is also why people feel safe with you. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it. Number 1. Rehearsing conversations in your head. You're brushing your teeth and suddenly you're lost in a conversation that never actually happened. You play both roles: what you'll say, how they'll react, and how you'll clarify your point. It might sound like overthinking, but in truth, your brain is just practicing emotional precision. People with high emotional intelligence often do this automatically. Before the real moment ever arrives, you've already drafted the script. You don't just think about what you want to say, you imagine how it will land, how it will feel, where the dialogue could veer off track, and what consequences it might spark. And during this rehearsal, you keep editing, tweaking your tone, shifting your phrasing, even reworking the ending. It's like writing a speech in your head, but not for a conference, for everyday conversations. And yes, it can be exhausting. Sometimes you wish you could just speak freely, like everyone else. But then you remember what happens when people talk without caring how their words affect others. You're different. You care. Maybe too much, but that's exactly what makes you reliable, safe, and the person people confide in. What others might dismiss as overthinking is for you simply preparation. And for someone with high emotional intelligence, it's just the way you move through the world. And that's what makes you stand out. We share more fascinating insights about life and emotions. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.